Once again, you're watching PJ Collection Clothing Online Class for Kids, and in this video I'll be showing us how to cut a trouser with the features elastic. The trouser will have elastic, belt band, and that of zip all in one. Elastic at the back, you have your belt band and also zip. Alright, now remember we're cutting for Wisdom Iguru, and he's 7 years 2 months old. Now the measurement are the waist 24, the thigh 18, the knee 14, the ankle 13, the trouser length is 28. Remember the features: the elastic, belt band, and zip all in one. Alright, so now I'll be working with 2 yards by 60. I'll be working with 2 yards by 60. So let's get down to business. So with me here, this is the fabric I'll be working with. I'll be working with this fabric. Now, the very first thing I need to do is to fold your fabric into 2. You fold your fabric into 2. And how do you know that your folding is okay? Divide your thigh by 2. Your thigh divided by 2. Take note. Will give you the exact width of your folding. Thigh divided by 2. Now in some fabric, there are some that are stretchy, like this one. Now it is stretchy, so you make sure that the stretchy part is at the width. Take note, the stretchy part is at the width. So in case this boy should add later on, automatically the fabric will stretch along. Alright, so you fold your fabric into 2, and we said this folding is being determined by the thigh divided by 2. Now I'll be using another pattern of cutting this time around. I'll be using the midline pattern, the middle line pattern. Now I'll be using the slope line pattern, so you watch carefully. Alright, the very first line after folding, the very first line I'm marking here is my waist line. Let me mark a straight line. In every human waist, the front is lower than the back. The front is lower than the back. So after marking this straight line, you mark a slant line down as shown, and this line should be at least the slant line should be at least 1.5 inch. Alright, now the next line I'll be marking is my thigh line, the thigh line, and to get that thigh line, you divide your hip by 4. Hip divided by 4 will give you a thigh line, or you measure from the waist down to the thigh of the person. While I was taking his measurement, I took note of the distance from his waist to his thigh, and it was 7 inch. The distance from his waist to the thigh was 7 inch. For adults, the distance ranges from 9, 10, 11. So I'm using 7. So, and again, I have a waistband of 1.5 inch. The waistband of 1.5 inch. So I'll subtract the 1.5 inch waistband that I'll use. Take note, I'll subtract the 1.5 inch waistband, so marking at 7 inch. This is my thigh line. So you have your waistline, your thigh line. Now the next line I'll be taking is the knee line. And to get the knee line, full trouser length divided by 4. Full trouser length divided by 4. So our trouser length is 28. 28 divided by 4 gives you 14. So at this point, remember, you remove your 1.5 inch point mark. So you have your 14 there. Alright. Now the next point I want to get is my full trouser length, which is taken from the waist. Remember, you're removing 1.5 inch from this point down. 28. So you're marking at 20. This is 28. Then I'm adding, since the growth is still growing, I'll add at least 3 inch or 3.5. The mother asks me to add enough allowance. Alright. So you now have your waistline. Now have your waistline, your thigh line, your knee line, and your ankle point. Remember, I said this time around I'll be using the slope line method. So unlike the other pattern that I'll divide the middle, no. Alright, so watch carefully. Now at the waist point, I'm marking a 1/4 inch, just a 1/4 inch. Then at the thigh point, I'm marking 1/2 inch. Then at the knee point, I'm marking 1 inch. the ankle point, I'm also marking 1 inch. Alright, so we'll connect this point that we've marked. By the time we connect all these points, we'll have a slope line as shown. This pattern is used for those that don't have big buttocks or hips. If they have a flat hips, you can use this pattern. Alright, so as you can see, take note, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. Alright, so at this point, we now put our measurements into working. The ankle is 13, so you divide it by 2. So 13 divided by 2 gives you 6 and half. 6 and half. Marking 6 and half. Alright. Now the knee is 14. 14 divided by 2 gives you 7. So at this point, you're marking from the slope point. After making your division, you're doing it from the slope point, from your slope line. Take note. So the knee is 14. 14 divided by 2 gives you 7. You mark. Now the thigh is 18. 18 divided by 2 gives you 9. You mark. Now you don't remove your tape. Very important. You now get our crotch. To get your crotch, you move down by 1.5 inch. Take now, you slope this line down. After marking your thigh point, you move down by 1.5 inch and you slope this line down as shown to get your crotch. And you now make a nice curve from this point that you mark. Remember, that is your thigh point. You make a nice curve. So this is how you get your crotch. Alright, so you now join other points that you've marked. Let's join other points. Alright. Okay, so at this stage, we are now to the waist point. You now want to move over to the waist point. Now the waist is 24. At the waist point, you divide it into 2. So from this point, the waist is 24. The waist here is 24. So 24 divided by 2 gives you 6. 6, 6, 12. 12, 12, 24. So I'm adding 1 inch extra, which is exactly at this point we've marked. Alright, so now that is it. So this is how we do the front panel. Remember, this front panel will be fixing belt, while the back panel will be fixing elastic. So this is the slope pattern. This is slope pattern. So we're now through with the front panel. We now want to cut. So as you can see, we're through with our front panel. This is the front panel. So we now want to cut the back panel. Alright, so the next thing we want to do now is to cut the back panel, and to do that, you fold your fabric into 2. Take note, you fold your fabric into 2. This time around, the folding should be wider compared to that of the front. So after that, you pick up your front panel as shown. Okay, you place this. Now you make sure that these edges are equal. Now take, these are ankle points, these are our knee points, and these are thigh points. Now remember, while we are cutting the front, we did not add any sewing allowance to the front. So while cutting the back, you add your sewing allowance, and we're adding 2 inch all through. So this, we're adding 2 inch all through. So at this point, we're adding 2 inch. Even at the thigh, you're adding 2 inch or 2.5 inch. Now moving over to the waist. Remember, while we were cutting the front, we added just 1 inch. So cutting the back, you're adding just 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch for the back. Now connect this. So we also connect this. Trying to connect this. Okay, now remember, we said that in this trouser, the front will be belt and the back will be elastic. So please watch carefully at this point. Watch carefully. Now remember, these are our front panel, so you see properly well. This is where the front panel line is. Now I'll be raising the back with 4 inch. Take note, I'll be raising the back with 4 inch because we'll be fixing elastic at the back. So I'm raising this with 4 inch. Okay, so I'll be marking this down. And remember, we added 1 inch, so this is 1 inch. So at this point we are now through. Remember, the reason why we're raising it with 4 inches because we use this to turn the elastic. That is why we are raising it with an extra 4 inch for the back. We're cutting. Alright, so this is how to cut for. As you can see, take a look at the spot. If you take a look, we are using this to turn our elastic down for the this is where the front panel is. This is the front, as you can see, this is the front. We use this to turn the elastic down to this. So I'll show us how to fix zip. We're fixing zip, we're adding waistband, and we're also fixing elastic. So in the next video I'll be showing us the various components of our trouser making. Okay, so in this video I'll be showing us how to cut and sew a trouser with elastic belt and band zip. We've already done the cutting with the black fabric, but because it's not that clear, so I had to switch it to this Ankara fabric so we'll see it properly. Alright, we've already done the cutting, so we now want to start the sewing properly. Remember, we have to fix elastic, belt band, and also zip all in one. Alright, so we begin with the front panel. These are front panel. So to begin with, you pick up your front panel, the two of them, then you want to fix the pocket. You want to start with the pocket. So now, from this point down, okay, let me keep it this way so you see it clearly. This is the wrong side. From this point down, you mark 7 inch. You mark 7 inch from this point down. Remember, we're doing it from the out seam. You mark 7.7 inch. Then at this point you mark 2.5 inch. Then you put a notch, which I've already done that. You put a notch there. You also put a notch. Then when you're through putting it, you now put your paper gum stay, strong paper gum stay, not the hard one. We have the semi-hard and the one that is very hard. So you put it at this spot. Then when you're through, you now fold. Watch carefully. You now fold as shown. Fold this. Fold this in as shown from the point here that you mark 7 and from the 2.5 inch spots that this is 2.5 inch. You can see it there. So you're folding should be up to that point. Okay, so I'm folding now. Alright, this is for the front pocket. We want to fix our front pocket. Alright, so when you're through with this, you get your pocket bag. These are pocket bag, and the width of our pocket bag on fold, the width is 5.5 inch and the length 13 inch. So we're working with 11 by 13. Take note, 11 by 13. So these are pocket bags. So now I want to start fixing the pocket. So the very first step you do, we'll go to our sewing machine to fix it. So let's do that now. Alright, to begin with, to fix our pocket bag, now this is the wrong side where you fixed your paper gum stay as shown. Now pick your pocket bag. Now pick your pocket bag. Now making sure that the wrong side facing the wrong side, and you place it as shown. This is the pocket bag. Make sure that these edges are equal, as you can see. So the very first thing I need to do, you place this as shown. You sew at this point. Remember, this is the folded line that we need the fold, but you sew beside that folded line. So you fold, you sew. Okay. Remember, there was a notch, so you put a notch on the pocket bag as well. There was a notch on the trouser. So now, after fixing it, you now fold. Watch carefully. You fold in. You're folding it inside. Then you now top stitch at this point, just by so let's do that now. Watch carefully. Okay. So after that, when you're through with that, take it to the, now bring this, okay, sorry, you open this. When you're through, you open it. Remember this, you take a look at this part, you sew this part, sew this part too. This part that is open, you sew it. There are different patterns of fixing pockets. I'm working with the most easiest pattern. Okay, so when you're through with this, you now bring this back. Remember, you folded, the notch we did was 7 inch by 2.5 inch. So you now fold back, making sure that this width here, okay, trying to fold back, we're trying to form our pocket, making sure that the width here is up to 2.5 inch. Take note, this width here, remember it was, okay, so you mark to confirm. Alright. Okay. So when you're through adjusting this, you tap this point, you sew this point. Take note, when you're through adjusting, you sew this point. That is where the 7 is stopped. Sew that point down. Okay. Now remember, the distance at this point is 2.5 inch, so you sew this point as well down. Okay, you remove the excess. Remember, the front panel was sloped down. So now we're almost through. Now, if you take and you open this, watch carefully. You open this. Then you put a notch at the pocket by at least 1/2 inch notch. Then you put your hand in from this point, in, and you bring it out. This, start 7 inch, and then you sew round. The essence of doing this is just to make sure that the edges of our pocket bag is smooth. Try to remove the excess. Okay, then when you're through with this, you take it back. Take it back. Okay. My hands are too big, so let me use it. So that is the essence of we doing that. So we top stitch again to be very firm. To be very firm. So at this point, we're not through fixing our front pocket. So this is how you fix your pocket. So you do this for the second part. So in the next video, I'll be showing us how to fix a zip. We'll be fixing a zip. Alright, so at this stage, we're now through fixing our 2 front pockets. So the next thing we want to do now is to fix our zip. And for us to fix the zip, we fix it at this crotch point. Take note, you're doing it at this crotch point. Now, you get your 2 zip placket. These are my 2 zip placket, of which I've already made, and the length here is 8 inch by 1.5 inch. Take note, 8 inch by 1.5 inch. Now to do that, for example, you pick up the fabric you want to use. The length can be 3 inch. Then you now fold. If you have your weaving machine, you can just weave this round. If you don't have, you can just fold it to the wrong side. Then you sew. You sew at this point, then you turn it. So that is how I come about with these 2 plackets. Now, to begin with, you go back to our trouser. Now you place the 2 wrong side together as shown. Then, since we're making for a kid, you put a notch from this point down. I'm marking 5 inch. That is the length of we fix our zip. 5 inch. Now the upper part, the up one as shown, making it a bit deeper, the notch. Alright, so now to begin with, remember you have your left and your right fabric. This is your, remember your left indirectly becomes your right and your right indirectly becomes your left. Take note. So this is my right fabric. the right panel. So now you pick up the right panel. Let's start with the right panel. Remember there was a notch, so I'm folding that notch. Let me iron it down. Okay, down to the point of the notch, as you can see. Okay, now you pick up one of the zip plackets. This is one of the zip plackets as shown. One, then you pick up your zip that you want to use, then you place it as shown. Okay, then you now pick up your, there are different patterns of fixing a zip, but let's go with this pattern. Now take note that the point where the notch is should be under the metal, as you can see. Should be under the metal, as you can see. Okay, so you now go to your sewing machine and you sew at this point. Make sure it's very close. You now sew at this point. You sew, you sew, you sew, making sure that this is under the metal. You sew to this point. Stop here. So let's do that now. Okay, so at this point I'm through with this other part. As you can see, I'm through with it. So keep this aside. Now we pick up the next panel. Watch carefully. Alright, so we're through with this other part. Now you keep this aside. Now for us to go to the next part, watch carefully. Now what you do is you turn this to the wrong side. This is the wrong side. Then you pick up your, making sure that the straight part is facing you. As you can see, this is the straight part. Now watch carefully. You now place this as shown. From the point where the notch is down to the remaining part should be at least 3/4 inch or 1 inch. Watch carefully. Step 1, this is the good side. You turn this to the wrong side. Then you now place this as shown. You now sew. You sew from this point down to where the notch is. So let's do that now. You stop at where the notch is. Stop at where the notch. Then when you're through, watch carefully. When you're through, you turn it to the good side. Turn this to the good side, as you can see. Then now you top stitch again at this point. You top stitch again. Take note, you're turning to the good side. Then while doing that, this small allowance should be moved. Take it to your left. Take note, you move it to your left and not to the right. So take this to your left. Then while doing that, you now top stitch at this point, on top of the placket and not the fabric, just by this point here, and you stop at where the notch is again. So let's do that now. Stop at where the notch is. Okay. Okay, we're through with this step. So now the next thing for us to do is to join the two together. And now pick up this. Watch carefully. Now this is the good side. Now pick up this other part. Good side facing the good side. Now you place this as shown, making sure that where the notch is, remember there was a notch on this and this other part. Make sure that the two notches are equal. Then you also make sure if these two parts are not equal, you make sure that these two edges, this edge here and this other edge, make sure that both should be equal. And if you take a look, you see a sewing line here. Watch carefully, you see a sewed line here. Make sure that this should not cover that sewed line. The reason is that if this should cover it, by the time you finish sewing your zip, you notice that this zip will be showing. So make sure it's just beside the zip. Watch carefully, it should be beside the zip. Alright, as you can see, not on top of the sewed part, just beside that sewed line. So making sure that these two lines are equal. Alright, so when you're through arranging this, now you sew from this point. Remember, look at this placket. You sew from this point here. Sew down half inch. Remember, it was half inch. Sew down to this point. Take note. From this point, you close it. Then you sew from here down. So let's do that now. Okay, and arrange it back. Okay, you're trying to sew. Make sure that So when you're through, you open it. We're almost through fixing our zip. As you can see, we're almost through fixing our zip. So if you take a look, you notice that these two edges are equal. That is what we're trying to prevent. And if you can see, the zip is properly closed. Alright, so we're almost through. Now, you place this, watch carefully. You make sure that this part is well relaxed as shown. You now open this. If you take a look, the zip is just sewn to one part of the placket alone. If you should take a look. So you now pick the zip and the placket. Watch carefully. Let me take it again. Make sure that you arrange this well as shown. As you can see, well arranged. Then you open this. After opening, remember the zip is sewn to just one side of the placket alone. So this time around, we're taking it to the second placket. So you pick the zip and the placket, then you sew. You're trying to sew. Okay. Alright. Try and work on your finishing or neatness, which means you have to remove all the threads. So we're through with that. So the next thing for us to do, we close this back, make sure that this is properly closed as shown. Properly closed. Okay. Now, if you take a look at some trousers, if you take a look, we're almost through, we're rounding up. You notice that there's a line at this point. Check the try, you see a line moving from this point, curve down to this point. That is what you want to do now. So I want to sew on top of this placket. You sew it there from here. You sew, and you curve it. Remember, there is a metal somewhere around there. That curved line must be directly under the metal. Take note. So let's do that now. Alright, so at this point we're now through fixing our zip. This, as you can see the line. So at this point, this is how to fix zip. So this is how you fix your zip. So the next thing we'll be doing is we'll now join the back to the front. Alright, so at this thing we're through fixing our pocket and our zip. So the next thing we want to do now is to fix our band, our waistband, before we join the back. Remember, we said the trouser will be elastic. It will have the band that we use. We are not using belt, but you have the band like in form of belt, and you also have your zip. So now we are through with this. The next we need to do is to take note of this. We have 14 here, just for the front alone, 14. So keep this aside. So the next we'll be working on the waistband. Now you get your strong paper gum stitch. This is a strong paper gum stitch that is a very strong one. Now remember, while we are cutting our trouser, we subtracted 1.5 inch for the waistband. For the front part, the width is 1.5 inch. Now the length here was 14, so we'll be using 16. So I have here 1.5 inch by 16 or by 17. So you gum as shown. Then when you're through gumming as shown, at least you leave a 1/4 inch, as you can see, a 1/4 inch. Then you fold this down. You fold this down, then you fold again as shown. Okay, then when you're through with that, you cut at least 3/4 inch away from the folded point. 3/4 inch away. Alright, the next thing you do again, you fold. This time around, you're not folding down to the edge here. Take note, you're not folding it to this edge. Just watch carefully. You fold at least. Okay. If you take a look, you notice that on fold, the down part, while on fold, you will notice that it is wider compared to the main stuff. Reason being that by the time you start sewing on top of this, automatically you'll be sewing at the down one. So that is the reason why. So we do this. So the next, we now go and fix this. We now want to fix this to the trouser. So let's do that now. All right. Before we fix the waistband, now you take note. You mark a point where you mark a point where the waistband will pass. This is where you sew your waistband. Reason being that by the time you start dragging your zip up, one should not exceed than the other. Take note, both should be equal. So now we open this. So we start with one part. Start with this part, making sure that there's an excess, as you can see. So you fold, you sew, as you can see. Okay, let's cut off this part. Okay, so watch carefully. The side, the 1/4 inch part that you left, is that up. Okay, so you now sew. You're not using belt, so you just no belt with brother. Making sure that this part is exactly. So you cut off the excess. This other part, you cut off the excess. Okay. Now pick up this other part. Cut off this as well. Okay. Pick up this other part. You're sewing from the back now, making sure that those edges are equal. So you're sewing, take note, you're sewing by the side of your paper gums and not on top. Watch carefully, you're sewing by the side and not on top. Remember, while we did the mark there, so your sewing should not come below that. So okay. Alright, so by the time you should close this now. You notice that is why we marked. You can see both are equal. You can see. Alright, so we open this back. Alright, now the next one to do this at the zip point, you take this to the back. Watch carefully. You take this to the back. Take it to the back. And you sew a straight line as shown. Sew a straight line as shown. Okay. Cut off the excess. Cut off the excess. Then you turn it back. So once you have these smooth edges here, so as you can see, that is it. Alright, this other part, you do the same thing for this other part as well. Take note, this other part, you take it to the back, you take this to the back, take this to the back, as shown. Then you sew a straight line. Cut off the excess, then you take it back as shown. Okay. Alright, so you have it there. Alright, so the next thing you do, you now top stitch. Remember, this part is open, so you now top stitch at this point. Remember, when we were making this, we said that the down part there was an overlapping, so by the time you start sewing on top of this, automatically you'll be sewing on this overlap part that we did. So now let's do that now. So as you can see, so you do that for the second part as well. Second part as well. So you sew on top of this. So at this point, this is how you fix your waistband. This is how you now want to fix the back panel. Okay, so at this point we're through fixing our pocket, our zip and our waistband. So we now want to join the back panel. So you keep this straight. Watch carefully. Now remember that while we were cutting, we added 4-inch allowance to the back that we said that would be for the elastic. We use it for the elastic. So now to do the joining, you pick up one and you start from this down part. You start from this down part here. This is the down part. So you sew half inch. Remember we added 2 inch, 1 so you sew half inch. You sew half inch down to the ending. By the time you sew half inch down to there, you notice that there will be an excess here, which we added. That is what we use to turn to fix our elastic. So let's do that now. We're trying to join the back panel to the front, going up half inch down. Now when you get to this point where your pocket is, now watch, look at this point here, where your pocket is. Make sure you double tap this pocket point here. Make sure you cover that part. Double tap it very well so it's very firm. Okay? So now we're through. The next thing we need to do is to join. As you can see, these are the excess. As you can see here, these are the excess here. Okay, the next thing is for us to join from the back. Take note, we're joining from the back. Alright, so as you can see, we're through joining both parts now. Now, remember the person's waist here, we're working for this person, and the waist here is 24. So let's check. So because here we have this is 26. Take a look. This is 26. This is 24. So you have 1, 2 extra. Which remember the elastic. So we are saying okay. Let's take it again to confirm. Let's take it again. Okay. This is 26 and half. We have 26 and half here. So we sew off. Remember we're still sewing off half inch. Take note. We're still sewing off half inch. So at the back, you're sewing off half inch from here down to this point. So let's do that now. Alright, so I've done the joining at the back panel. We're almost through with trouser. Now, you take this to the back. This is the back. This is the front. The wrong side now. The next we want to do is for us to fix our elastic. We now want to fix our elastic from the back. This is the back panel. Take note. So you quickly iron this down. This is the back view. Alright, from the wrong side. Remember this is the front and this is the back. So now let's take a look at the point from this point sewed down to this point. We have okay, we have 13 inch. Alright, 13 inch. Take note, 13 inch. So now you get your elastic that we use. Remember from here to this point was 13 inch. So your elastic should be half of it. Take note, half of it, or at least 1 inch above the half. So if this point to this point is 13 inch, that means your elastic should be 6.5 inch. That is 6.5 inch. Alright, so let's just assume that's okay. So let's assume now. Remember we said from this point here was 13, so your elastic should be half of it. So half of 13 should be 6.5. So I've marked it. So now you pick up. Let's confirm if it will stretch from this point to this point. So let's see. Okay, as you can see, it was enough. So then remember from this point, the half of it. Remember it was 13. So half of it was 6.5. So you pick it up to check if it will stretch from here to here. So good, perfectly. All right. So you add at least 1.5 inch sewing allowance. So that will be okay. So I'll be cutting off this part. Okay, that will be so. Now you go to your sewing machine. Take note. You go to your sewing machine. Look at the point where your waistband is. This is point where your waistband is, as you can see. Now go to your sewing machine. You sew from this point. This is the sewed part. As you can see, this is the sewed part. So you go to your sewing machine, just immediately on top of the waistband there, as you can see there. As you can see. So you go to your sewing machine. You sew this part. You sew this part as many times as possible to hold it very firm. So when you're through with this, you move this over to this other part. Move it to this other part. Move it to this other part. Then you also sew behind the, look at this is sewed point. You're doing this behind. Take note. Behind. Let's take note. This other first one was behind. Look at the sewed line here. This is sewed line. You're doing it behind. You sew this as many times as possible. So let's do that now. Okay, we're trying to sew the elastic. Remember, we're sewing it at the back panel. Okay, so you move this down. You take this down to this other part as well. And sew. Behind, remember we said behind the Alright, so as you can see, I've sewn this. Now, you take this excess. Now, remember there was an excess that we did the cutting. So you take this, watch carefully. Now, let's use the front. You bend this to the front. Watch carefully. This is the front now. This excess, you bend it to the front, making sure it's lapping your waistband properly well. Then you fold at least half. You fold. Take note. The half inch should exceed this point. Take note. This is your waistband. This is your waistband. You fold this, relax it properly, then you fold this. Then remember there was a sewed line here. As you can see, there's a sewed line. So you continue this sewed line down to this ending. So let's do that now. Make sure you remove the elastic. The elastic is not included. Remove it because you've already done the sewing. Okay. Alright, for the other part as well. Okay, you move over to this part. Watch carefully. Watch carefully. I remove the elastic. Make sure the elastic, you remove it. So you bend it to the back as shown. Make sure that it's well relaxed on your waistband. Well relaxed. Then you bend this backward as shown. You can see I'm bending it backward. Okay. Make sure we said it should be bending, this folding should exceed this waistband. Watch carefully, at least just little as you can see. So now sew again. Remember there is a sewed line here, so you sew from this point to meet up this sewed line as shown. Alright, so let's do that now. You turn it back. Alright, so you now turn this back when you're through. Turn this back. As you can see, it has covered the. You turn this back as well. As you can see, it has covered the. So as you can see. So now you now top stitch. So you open the top stitch from this point. Please look at the previous waistband there, as you can see. This is the previous waistband. So you top stitch from here down to the other part. So continue from there. Trying to continue from the main waistband at the front. Try to stretch this. Remember, this should be well relaxed. Okay. Okay. Trying to sew the waistband. So you sew this round. Your back elastic in the front. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is to take our full trouser length. Okay, so at this point we now want to get our trouser length. The person's trouser length is 28. We now want to get our full trouser length, so you place this as shown. You iron this part down. So the person's trouser length is 28. So I'm folding exactly at 28. Okay. Alright, so you now sew this. You sew this and you also sew this. So let's do that now. Alright, so we're through sewing this down part. So the final and the last thing to do is to join the remaining part, starting from the ankle. Now before you join that, you sew this part for the crotch point first with 1/2 inch. You tack it down. Now start from the ankle point. From this ankle point, remember the person's ankle is 13, so you measure 13 and you sew down. That is 6.5. 6.5. The knee is 14. This knee point here is 14. Sew down. Okay. Then you do the same thing for the other leg as well. Starting from this point, you mark, remember it's 13, so that will be 6.5. That is 6.5, 13. Alright, so the final part, you iron this down. You also iron this down as well. So this is how you make trouser width. You can apply this for an adult as well. Okay, so this is how to make the trouser with zip, elastic and belt band. Once again, you're watching PJ Collection Clothing online class.